All right, welcome to a presentation about health privacy legislation. Before we go into electronic ACRs, we really need to discuss some legislation in Ontario that applies right now, because when we started introducing electronic ACRs, electronic storage of health records, and stuff like that, there was a lot of concern about the security of personal health information, as you can well imagine. It really was a concern. So let's just walk through this very, very quickly. The Personal Health Information Protection Act, PHIPA, 2004, came into force November 1st, 2004, designed to balance the protection of confidentiality and privacy of individuals while still facilitating effective health care. The whole goal of electronic storage and having records available electronically obviously is to improve the ability for doctors and healthcare to access information very quickly when it's needed. But there needs to be protections in place to make sure it isn't accidentally people don't get accidental access to information. So why protect privacy? It's the law. We've talked about privacy, and we've talked about your obligations to keep personal information private, but it is the law. As a healthcare organization, the paramedic service that you're riding out with is required to protect the privacy of all patients that are under their care for the 20, 30, 40 minutes that you'll have access to a patient in their care. They have to, by law. There's some pretty steep fines attached to failure to maintain that privacy. It's your professional obligation. It's the right thing to do, and it's just an expectation. So, definition of personal health information. It's defined as information that relates to an individual's physical and mental health, the provision of health care to that individual, identifying anybody's healthcare provider. Usually they're talking about, their family physician, that sort of thing. Identifies an individual's substitute decision maker. Relates to payments or eligibility for healthcare. Is the individual's healthcare number itself. The donation of body parts or bodily substances. And may also be a plan of service under Home Care and Community Services Act. So some of the stuff you may not have even considered as being personal health information. During your ride-outs, you may have been very aware that you're not going to discuss medical history. You're not going to discuss, date of birth and healthcare number and stuff like that. But you probably didn't really consider that just knowing somebody's, family physician truly is personal health information. Security safeguards help to protect personal health information against loss or theft. And so we use a variety of methods to keep private information private and to keep it secure. Physical protections, administrative protections, and technological protections. So some of these, hopefully you're using. Some of these are provided for you by the software vendor that perhaps you're using for electronic ACRs. Physical measures that you're probably already used to. Locked ambulances, locked bases, locked filing cabinets, locked offices, right? Anything that should be secured is secured. Not leaving personal health information lying around. So, you have notes that you've taken during a call, right? So you probably have your notepad and you've got a ton of information there. When you finish your electronic ACR, when you finish your documentation, right, those notes get shredded. They go into a shredder. They're destroyed forever. They're not taken home. They're not left out on the table while you watch TV for somebody else to come along and look at. You're going to personally take responsibility for securing and destroying that information. Administrative measures is confirmation of identity. So making sure that you have the correct information for the patient you're dealing with. Sign-out procedures for health records doesn't really apply to you, the paramedic. That would be more a case of in the hospital, accessing hospital records, that sort of thing. limiting access, signing confidentiality agreements, and I'm quite certain you had to sign confidentiality agreements when you started your preceptorship. Policies and procedures, awareness and training, and then technological measures. These are the things that your software vendor will provide. Firewalls and encryption, strong password requirements. When we finish the electronic ACR presentation and I've given you, your secure passwords and everything, they're going to be PHIPA compliant passwords. And PHIPA compliant passwords are deliberately complicated, strong passwords. Access controls, auditing, electronic reminders, all that sort of stuff. Workstation security. Paramedics and students must secure the computers and electronic information at all times. So if you're in the middle of an electronic ACR, in the middle of documentation, and you have to leave suddenly, perhaps another call comes in, you're going to log off. You're not just going to walk away from the computer and leave it open, because that could mean anybody else could come in and have unauthorized access to your database, to your electronic ACR. And of course, passwords are never shared. A privacy breach is an unauthorized access, collection, use, or disclosure of personal health information. It may be intentional. It may genuinely be somebody who is actively trying to steal information, right? Healthcare is big business in Canada. And, having access to somebody's healthcare number could be valuable to the wrong crowd. Maybe inadvertent, accidentally seeing your ACR, while you're working on the computer. It may be, failure to protect, leaving your notes lying around, that sort of thing. And my line at the bottom there is just a question. Consider why firefighters and police want personal health information. Firefighters and police, they have documentation they need to complete. But the documentation doesn't need to have, health card numbers, doesn't need to have personal health information. Police might need a date of birth in order to, positively identify, a person of interest. But they don't need all of that personal medical information. Firefighters shouldn't need any of this stuff at all. They should be happy collecting a license plate number. So I'm not suggesting we get into a fight on scenes with our allied emergency services. I'm just saying, be careful what you share with them. What can you do to protect privacy? Do not discuss personal health information in public places. Don't tell stories. We all want to tell stories, particularly when you're new in your career and you want to share stories with your classmates. Just be careful of the surroundings that you do it in. It's probably pretty safe to do it at school in the classroom. It's probably not safe to do it at Tim Hortons. Be cautious when communicating personal health information at a hospital, because you do need to give reports to nurses, to doctors. You don't necessarily need to be shouting at the top of your lungs so that everybody in the emergency department can hear. And do not access personal health information of people whom you're not providing health care. If they're not your patient, you don't need to know. Do not leave the records of personal health information unattended or unsecured. So this applies to your notes. This applies to anything you've printed out, anything you've photocopied. Do not remove personal health information from a secure environment unless necessary. And if we're talking about your personal notes or anything like that, there's never a reason to take them out of the ambulance base. Do not write down or share your passwords. Do not store personal health information on a mobile device. This has been in the news several times over the last few years where, a hospital laptop has been stolen and it's contained thousands of health records, right? That's just a disaster waiting to happen. Do not retain personal health information for longer than necessary. This doesn't really apply to you guys, but if you're using a laptop or a tablet during the course of your rideouts, there may be personal health information stored on those devices. It should be encrypted, so you don't need to worry about it too much. But, you need to be aware. You can't just leave it lying around for somebody to pick up and take off with. it needs to be locked in the ambulance, locked into its holder. What can you do to protect privacy? If you suspect an actual or suspected privacy breach, make sure you notify your preceptor. Make sure you notify the service supervisor, the duty officer that's on, the program coordinator. Make sure that Kelly knows, and your write-out coordinator. Make sure Vanessa knows, right? If there's been something serious that could open up the service or the college to liability. Be careful with social media. Never tell stories, never discuss personal health information on Facebook or Twitter. You're just asking for trouble. Even if you believe it to be harmless, the smallest details can reveal personal health information. Even if you don't know the patient's name, even if you forget the patient's name, if you forget their date of birth, if you're telling a story at Tim Hortons and you give enough detail to identify that patient, if you describe the car that was flipped over in the Trent River, right? The person at the table next to you at Tim Hortons may be a family member, right? That's going to be a breach. Under PHIPA, you are a health information custodian. That means that you have rights and responsibilities under this legislation. Many of our allied agencies are not. So again, be careful about what you share. A health information custodian shall take steps that are reasonable to ensure that personal health information in the custodian's custody or control is protected against the theft, loss, unauthorized use, or disclosure. Right? That's a responsibility for you. Handling of records. Again, you are a health information custodian. Ensure that records that are in custody or under control are retained, transferred, and disposed of in a secure manner. That's your responsibility. Requirement for consent. A health information custodian shall not collect, use, or disclose personal health information unless you've obtained consent from that patient. We've talked about consent from day one in the paramedic program. You cannot provide, care to a patient. You cannot administer treatments to a patient. You can't put hands on a patient without getting consent first. Here's one more thing. You cannot collect personal health information without consent first. Confidentiality of health cards. Well, if you're going to handle a health card, you have to make sure that you keep the number secure and confidential and make sure that it goes to the right place at the right time. Usually when we're handling health cards, we hand them over to nurses. Make sure that happens. Right? Again, you do not want somebody accidentally getting their hands on somebody else's health card. Compliant passwords, I mentioned earlier. Very, very strong passwords are necessary. The Ontario Privacy Commissioner has developed a policy on healthcare-related passwords. Passwords must be a minimum of 8 characters in length, with more than 14 being ideal. Absolutely no dictionary words. Passwords must contain both capital and lowercase letters, numbers, and special characters like I've shown you there. So to give you some perspective, if you do online banking, if you do web banking with your bank, whether it's Nova Scotia or TD Bank or whatever the case may be, chances are your password to get into your online banking is not this secure. My particular bank does not require any special characters. In fact, it doesn't like you to put in special characters. So the province of Ontario takes your health information, the security of it, more serious than they do the money in your bank account. Electronic signatures. Legally recognized in Canada under the Personal Information Protection Electronic Documents Act 2000. That says that electronic signature that results from application of a technology or process prescribed by regulations is legal. So in the paper ACR days, we used our black ink pen and we signed that document. It became legal. In your electronic ACRs, there needs to be an area there where it captures your signature electronically. It gets time-stamped and dated and permanently attached to that document, in this case, our electronic ACR. The Electronic Commerce Act, also in 2000, also supports the use and authorization of electronically captured signatures. So if you're found in violation, remember I said earlier, PHIPA has some very, very sharp teeth. Individuals found to be in violation of PHIPA are subject to a fine of not more than $50,000. A deliberate release of personal information or an accidental release, it doesn't matter. If you are responsible for releasing personal health information, $50,000 fine. Unfortunately, it doesn't stop there. Your preceptor, who is responsible for you, is also subject to a $50,000 fine. Their supervisor is subject to a $50,000 fine. Your ride-out coordinator, $50,000 fine. Program coordinator, $50,000 fine. The province takes this very seriously. Corporations found to be in violation of PHIPA are subject to a fine of not more than $250,000. So guess what? If you're responsible for release of personal health information, Loyalist College can be levied with a $250,000 fine. The paramedic service that you're riding out with can be subject to a $250,000 fine. I'm going over this on purpose. I want you to appreciate the danger of not protecting that information. It can be very, very costly. You've signed confidentiality agreements with both Loyalist College and your precepting service. So everybody is going to be able to point fingers at you, the student, and say, there's the person responsible. Health privacy legislation, here is the particular references. Again, PHIPA 2004, the two Electronic Documents Act and Electronic Commerce Act 2000, and in May 2007 is when the Privacy Commissioner developed those the password requirements.